Thought Power, Chapter 9, Thought Power Methods. Another important method of applying the principles of thought power by means of the transmission of thought currents and the consequent action of thought induction is that which may be called the direct message. In this case, there is secured not only the general effect of the vibrations of your thought atmosphere, but also the direct and special effect of these vibrations, which arise from strong particular ideas and thoughts existing in your own mind, and which you wish to get across into the mind of the person with whom you are talking. In the direct message, you flash directly from your own mind the message to the mind of the other person. It is as if you sent him a strong wireless message direct from your brain to his. The occultists say that in such cases there may be perceived an actual flash of thought power from the one brain to the other. Men and women of strong personalities possess to a high degree this power of sending the direct message, and this fact accounts in a large measure for their power of impressing and influencing other persons. In applying the method of the direct message, you first arouse and create in your own mind a strong, clear, and positive idea or thought which you wish to be conveyed to the mind of the other person. This is an important preliminary stage of the method, for unless you have something clear and strong to send as a message, you cannot expect the other mind to receive a clear and strong message. Your message at the sending end must be vivid, intense, and dynamic, in order that it may produce a like effect at the receiving end. The more thoroughly convinced you are of the truth and reality of the idea and thought to be sent as a message in this way, the greater will be the degree of strength of the message, and the greater the degree of ease with which you may send it. Therefore, you must thoroughly convince yourself of the truth and reality of your message before you send it. You must arouse within yourself a degree of enthusiasm over its truth and reality. You must make it ring with the truth within your own mind and soul. You must be able to feel the vibration of truth arising from it. It is true that some persons possessing marked ability as actors may counterfeit more or less successfully this mental attitude of truth, and thus may obtain a considerable degree of strength in their thought messages. But nevertheless, there is nothing so strong and sure as the truth in such cases. The counterfeit truth has a tendency to break down at the critical moment and destroy the effect of the previous favorable impression of the message. Search for the truth in your idea or thought and hold closely to it. The truth is mighty and will prevail. Another point to be remembered in connection with the message is this: the message must appeal to the general desires, aims, aspirations, ambitions, and wishes of the other person, must fit in with his ideals and hopes in order to reach him easily and affect him strongly. The salesman whose message vibrates with the thought, "I wish to save you money," or "I wish to benefit you," creates a far different impression from that which arises from the firmly held, strong thought that "I want to sell you something," or that "I want to get an order from you." The strong, vivid thought, "I like you," is far better calculated to awaken a kindly response than the thought, "I want you to like me," which so many employ. Of course, certain messages awakening the fear of consequences resulting from an action or the refusal to act serve to appeal to the self-interest and desires of a person in certain cases, and often are so employed with more or less success. But on the whole, it is far wiser to proceed on the principle embodied in the old fable, the fable in which it is related that after the strong north wind had failed to blow the cloak from the shoulders of the man, the sun accomplished the task by sending its rays upon him and causing him to seek relief from its heat by removing the cloak. Positives are better than negatives in most cases. In sending the direct message in a personal interview, you proceed as follows. 1. Having previously aroused the conviction of the truth of the idea in your own mind, and having awakened an enthusiasm concerning it in your own heart, you must call up the idea, thus energized and rendered dynamic, into your own consciousness, holding it there constantly throughout the entire interview. 2. You must exert a conscious, steady, though imperceptible effort in the direction of projecting the stream of thought vibrations to the mind of the other person. You will be able to do this with the greatest effect and the least effort if you will use your imagination to picture the actual passage of the thought current from one brain to the other. Professor E.B. Warman, a pioneer investigator of this and similar subjects, calls this employment of thought power impulsion, thus distinguishing it from compulsion, the latter being held by him to indicate will force. He says, compulsion is a force from without, impulsion a force from within. Compulsion will make an enemy of a friend. Impulsion will make a friend of an enemy. Which is preferable? By impulsion, I mean that you should lodge the thought in the mind of the other man to do as you desire. Is it right? Yes, if your business is right. It is merely another form and a better form of using persuasive powers. The same writer and teacher indicates an interesting feature of the employment of this method as follows. To lodge the thought successfully, you should think in the first person singular. 1. That is, think as if you were thinking for him. If you think in the second person, you, he will feel a sense of compulsion. By the first method, he is impressed to do as you desire. He illustrates this point of practice by several instances of his personal employment of it. For instance, I said nothing, but I thought very intently for him, impulsion. This is the thought I held on him. Well, you come in at 1 o'clock. That little word well is a great compromiser. All this probably occurred in the space of a minute, but it seemed many of them to me. Finally, I looked up and said, well, I thought the rest for him, but spoke not a word. Instantly, he took my cue from the spoken word and voiced my unexpressed thought, saying, well, you come in at 1 o'clock. On the way to the bank, I held this thought on and for the banker. Well, I've decided to pay you. I held it so hard, so tenaciously, and with such confidence and concentration, and so exclusively of all other thoughts, that had I spoken to anyone on the way, I fear that I would have given utterance to my one and only thought. Well, I've decided to pay you. At precisely 1 o'clock, I presented myself at his desk. He looked up at the clock, and as he did so, said, I see you're on time to the minute. I was almost afraid to speak, lest I might lose my grip on the thought I was holding on and for him. But I at once assured him that being on time was one of my cardinal principles. No sooner did I get my hold on that which I desired him to say, than simultaneously with my thought, he voiced it. Well, I've decided to pay you. Again, he gives the following very interesting and decidedly humorous advice. You have a caller either at the office or at home. It is your busy day. Time is precious. Your caller does not know when to depart. You can freeze him out or otherwise make him uncomfortable, or at last resort, you can ask him to go. Any of these might be efficacious, but things efficacious are not always expedient. There is a better way. Do not use compulsion, but impulsion. Impel him to go. That is, lodge the thought with him in the first person singular. That is done by thinking for him. Well, I must be going. That is what I term holding the thought on or over him. Almost instantly, he will be impressed with the thought as emanating directly from himself, and he will voice your thought as his own. Well, I must be going. When he thus expresses himself, let him go. Do not be dishonest by trying to be polite and saying, why, what's your haste? I'm sorry you have to go so soon. It would serve you right if you then sat down and stayed an hour. If you have an occasion to strive to convert or to convince other persons in the course of your business or social life, you will find your efficiency in this direction greatly increased by a little practice in the art of sending these thought messages along any of the several lines above mentioned. Some have found Professor Warman's plan of thinking for him in the first person singular to be especially effective. Others prefer the more familiar method. Either will do the work, so take your choice. You understand, of course, that these thought messages may be sent during the course of your conversation, argument, or discussion, or they may immediately follow it. Use the method indicated by the circumstances of the case. Remember also that this is not hypnotism, mesmerism, or anything of that kind. It is simply an especially effective way of getting across to others that which is usually transmitted by the spoken word. Some very good teachers laid great stress upon the transmission of thought power messages in the act of handshaking. They hold that in this way one may get over to another in the most effective manner the general impression sought to be made upon the mind of the other person. They point out the fact that the most magnetic persons are distinguished by their live hand clasp, in which thought and feeling are expressed and impressed. These teachers impress upon their pupils the importance of throwing thought and feeling into the hand clasp. They advise, for instance, that one should hold firmly in thought the words, "I like you and you like me," when shaking hands with the person whom one desires to impress in this way. The thought being accompanied by the mental picture of the passage of the thought current from the one mind to the other. By means of the line of which the clasped hands are the connecting link. Some of the most successful persons have discovered by actual experience the value of this method, though they usually fail to recognize the actual principle involved. They have found that it works and they let it go at that, without seeking the scientific explanation. Many of the best authorities are agreed that this method furnishes one of the most effective means of sending the direct message by means of thought power. Another and a somewhat more complex form of sending thought messages of this kind to another person is that which may be called the distant message. This form of thought message is practically the same as that just described, except that in the present case, the other person is not present in person, but is at some distance from you at the time the message is being sent. In cases of this kind, you may effectively present an argument or a plea, an appeal, or a petition, a warning or a caution to another person in advance of a personal interview, and rendering the latter far more effective than would be the case otherwise. You may even prepare the mental soil for a decision by employing either the usual method or else the impulsion, first person singular method suggested by Professor Gorman. In sending a thought message of this kind, the sender proceeds just as if the other person were present at the place from which the message is sent. With his mind charged with the consciousness of the truth of his message, the sender verbally addresses the other person just as though he were present in person. The verbal message corresponds to what would be the spoken message were the two persons actually in each other's presence. The same arguments are used and the same earnestness displayed. The only difference is that the other person is not around to such an earnest refutation of the argument as might be the case in a personal interview. The discussion and argument, consequently, is more one-sided. A writer in a popular magazine, in his articles stating the results of an investigation of the subject now under consideration, cites a number of interesting cases in which the general principle of thought power was applied to practical ends along the lines just mentioned. Among other cases, he mentions the following. Miss H gave an instance out of her own experience. She tried an experiment in this case. First, she obtained the agency for a set of books that sold for $50. Then she selected the names of 15 prospects and sold each one a set as fast as she could reach the prospect and present the proposition. She declared that she actually made the sale to each one in her own room before she started out. She also told me about an insurance man who sells $100,000 policies at his desk before he approaches the prospect. The same writer reported as follows the same lady's answer to his question. How is it done? The secret is this: you concentrate definitely for prospects and then on individuals. You put in a few minutes each day picturing just what you want to take place and then go out and hustle to accomplish that purpose. For example, if there is an ugly customer you desire to subdue, you create a word picture of yourself actually subduing him. You hold that picture steadily in your conscious mind for 10 or more minutes if possible. If you can think of that and nothing else for 3 minutes without your thought flirting about, you will be doing well. A good time to focus your conscious mind on your supreme desire is while you are in the act of going to sleep or while you are just waking up in the morning. The best practice, however, is to get off by yourself, clear away from all noise and distractions. Sit down or lie down, relax the body and mind completely, and concentrate on the thing that you wish your subconscious mind to do. If you will do that 15 minutes daily, you will have no more doubts about the efficacy of the method. You must claim the desired quality or object before you actually possess it. Concentration is in the present, immediate, right now. You create the image or make a mold of what you want by affirmation and visualization, and then the subconscious mind makes that image a reality. You use your will in forming the image, but your will does not do the work. To use a well understood figure of speech, the subconscious mind is the power that operates the engine, and your will does the steering. Everything depends upon the intensity of desire and perfection in concentration. It is no small achievement to hold a single thought or idea in the mind for any length of time, but it can be acquired by practice. Generally, however, results will come in a few days, but do not get discouraged if you do not realize your expectation at first. Keep right on concentrating and working, and you will eventually achieve victory. In the above case, the lady relating the personal experience and those of others places great emphasis upon the part played by the subconscious mind in the manifestation of thought power. She is quite right in doing so, yet some persons reading the statement may be led to believe that the subconscious mind is an entity performing the work in the case, which is a mistaken idea. The subconscious mind is not a distinct entity, but is rather a part of the mind of the individual, a plane or level of consciousness in his mentality. A large portion of one's thought waves or thought currents are sent out by the subconscious mentality, and a large part of one's impressions received in this way are taken up by his subconscious mental mechanism. But the power employed in sending the subconscious messages of thought vibration and that which registers them on the subconscious receiving instruments is thought power, such as has been described in this book. The subconscious mind is merely a series of planes or levels of mental activity lying below those of ordinary consciousness. It will be well for you to bear in mind this important distinction. Those who have made a careful study of this distant message phase of thought transmission and thought induction report that the efficacy of the plan depends materially upon the degree in which the sender visualizes or pictures mentally, A, the actual presence of the other person, and B, the actual passage of the thought current. One investigator says, if you are able to visualize so effectively that the other person seems to be actually present before you in person, and so that you may actually sense the passage of the thought vibrations, then the effect will be enormously increased. Some teachers in private lessons have laid down quite elaborate rules and directions governing this method, but in the above statements will be found the essential principles of the matter and the practical gist of the method. There have been written and taught many sensational elaborations of this method, most of which, however, are merely the work of an active imagination. To some, this method had seemed to threaten dire danger of hypnotism at long range, black magic, etc., and to be akin to controlling the wills of other persons at a distance by means of some magic power. Those who have carefully investigated the matter, however, assure all persons that there is present here nothing more than the ordinary suggestive effect of strong convictions transmitted by means of thought vibrations in a personal interview, the ordinary inductive action of positive mental states such as we have described to you in previous sections of this book. The rules of thought induction set forth in detail in section 7 of this book apply here as well as in all other forms or phases of thought induction. There is here present the effect of harmonious attraction and of belief or fear. There is no cause for undue alarm in the matter, and most certainly no one need feel any fear concerning any undue influence being exerted over him to his detriment, particularly if he will acquaint himself with the principles governing all thought induction and will avail himself of the ordinary protective methods indicated in such cases. In the remaining portion of this section of this book, we shall point out the general principles and methods of self-protection, which apply to the present case as well as to all other forms of thought induction. We advise you to study carefully these principles and methods. Self-protection against thought induction. Nature in the various fields of her activity is seen to supply a protective element to her creatures in all cases in which there is present an element which threatens to become destructive or harmful. To one creature, it supplies the defensive armor of shell, to another, sharp quills or spines, to another, the power of swift flight, to another, a quick brain. It supplies to one the fur coat, protecting against the cold, to another, the instinct to hibernate, to another, the tendency to take on fatty deposits during the cold season. For every bane, nature furnishes an antidote. As might be expected, it supplies to man the means of protecting himself against adverse thought induction. Some of these means man employs instinctively, but now that man has discovered the principles underlying thought power and is employing it more effectively and more consciously, there have also been discovered methods of effectively and consciously counteracting and neutralizing the effects of its improper uses. In the first place, as we have already informed you, everyone has a protective immunity from thought induction of all kinds, which he exercises to a greater or less extent according to his development and state of knowledge. In a general way, it may be stated that no one need fear being adversely affected by thought induction if he will, 1, keep his own mind clear and free from low, mean, selfish, destructive thoughts, schemes, and plans to take advantage of others. 2, keep his emotional nature free from low, base passions and inclinations. And 3, keep his mind free from fear thought. His power of resistance will be enormously increased if he will practice the art of encouraging the mental states directly opposed to those just noted, and thus manifest the characteristic mental states of nobility, cleanness, and fearlessness. You will see the reason for the above statement if you will refer to previous sections of this book and will read what has been said there concerning the attractive power of thought. You will see that the rule of like attracts like in the world of thought vibrations, and that the something without cannot kindle the flame unless it finds the something within to furnish the fuel for the mental combustion. Or, employing another figure of speech, you will see that just as physical personal cleanliness prevents the creation of congenial lodging places for noxious germs, so will mental personal cleanliness prevent the formation of congenial lodging places for mental microbes. What has just been said applies in equal measure to what we have previously told you concerning the evil effect of fear thought as an attracting force for undesirable thought vibrations and thought induction. A mental state of fear thought will open the doors to undesirable thought influences, while in the same way, the mental states of fearlessness, courage, and self-confidence will render one practically immune from adverse influences of this kind. Above everything else, you should build up for yourself the protective armor of fearlessness concerning thought influences. No thought influence can enter your mental realm if you are surrounded by an aura of fearlessness and self-confidence. We cannot impress this upon you too strongly. The following suggestions along these lines should prove helpful to you in case you feel the need of cultivating a greater degree of fearlessness, a greater degree of immunity to thought induction. We advise you to study them carefully in any event. The positive center. Begin by creating for yourself what has been called the positive center. Here you enter into a strong conscious recognition and realization of yourself as the ego, the I am I, the self, master of your physical and mental realm, able to govern your mental states and to change your mental attitude at will. You should persevere in this recognition and realization until you are able to feel yourself as this I am I, until you can actually feel that I am here at the very center of your being. When you have reached this stage of the consciousness of egohood, you will realize that you are superior to mental changes and physical changes, and that nothing in the outside world can really affect your position of security and power. This I am I, which is your real self, is pure spirit, superior to both mind and body, and master of both. When you attain this consciousness, you may laugh at the efforts of any person to influence or control you by psychic or mental influences of any kind whatsoever. The protective aura. Even before you attain the full realization of the I am I, or real self, however, and are thus rendered absolutely immune to outside influence, you may create for yourself an armor of protection from undesirable thought induction by a simple mental process, which we shall now describe to you. This armor of protection is known as the protective aura. It consists of your personal thought aura or thought atmosphere, highly charged with positive thoughts of immunity and resistant power. As its name indicates, it serves as a protective armor of thought vibration, which serves to repel and to deflect any adverse or undesirable thought currents which may seek entrance into your mental realm by means of thought induction. To create the protective aura, you must first create in your imagination as clear and as strong as possible a picture of it, a picture of what your thought aura would look like if you were possessed of the power of seeing it with your ordinary vision. You must picture it extending around your body for a distance of several feet. Then you must picture as pouring into it the waves of the protective thought vibrations with which you are charging it. You must picture it vibrating with protective strength and power. You must see the aura as affording a sure and perfect protection against the influence of any thought currents, thought waves, or thought streams of any kind from other minds, provided that such carry vibrations which are adverse to your interests or which are undesirable to you. You must see this protective aura deflecting the undesirable thought influences or else causing them to rebound from its surface and to fly back to the source from which they came. Practice until you are able to create a clear and positive mental picture of the aura and its protective action. This may seem somewhat fanciful to you when you first read the above statement, but there is involved in it a certain natural, though but little understood, principles of the highest importance. A little practice will bring to you certain positive proofs of the efficacy of the method, proofs arising from your own experience. You will feel a certain freedom from outside impressions of an undesirable kind, a certain sense of poise and power, a certain freedom, a certain security and immunity, which will convince you that there is something in all this, though I do not exactly understand the inner principles involved in it. You should keep your protective aura well charged with the protective vibration. At least once a day, you should create the mental picture of it in action, and at the same time, should recharge it with a fresh stream of positive thought. A few moments will be all that is required once you have acquired the knack. The following affirmation and denial, silently uttered by you, will be found useful in creating and charging the protective aura. They serve to give form and pattern to your thought. Affirmation. Say silently to yourself, I am master of my mental atmosphere. I have created a protective aura around me, which renders me immune to all undesirable thought influences of whatever kind or character. I am fully protected. I am immune. I charge my aura with the most positive thought vibrations and thus render it impregnable. Denial. In the same way, say to yourself, I deny to any and all undesirable thought influences the power of affecting me. I deny to them the power of penetrating my protective aura. I am immune to their influence. This method will protect you from any form of adverse or undesirable phases of thought induction, thought contagion, or thought infection. Its employment will give to you a new sense of power and poise. It will prevent you from being swept off your feet by any form of mental epidemic or excitement. It will serve to confound and confuse other persons who may attempt to employ upon you some of the forms of personal thought influence, such as we have indicated in the preceding pages. Do not allow the apparently fanciful nature of the method to prevent you from learning how to produce the desired condition and to secure its benefits. A little actual experience with it will serve to convert you into an enthusiastic follower of the method. You owe it to yourself to give it a trial, an earnest, fair trial. It may come in quite handy and useful in some hour of need.